Chapter 1. The Silent Contract. Damian Black preferred corners where light barely reached. The back booth of the all-night diner on the south edge of Chicago suited him perfectly. Dim, greasy, forgotten. Rain hammered the windows in relentless sheets, turning the neon open sign outside into a stuttering red pulse. He sat motionless, black leather gloves still on, as though the cold might seep into his bones if he removed them. 30 minutes earlier, a courier in a hooded jacket had slid a plain manila envelope across the scarred formica table without a word and vanished into the storm. Damian opened it now with practiced care. A single 8x10 photograph stared back. Sophia Laurent, age 28, dark hair pulled into a loose ponytail, green eyes sharp and unguarded behind wire-rimmed glasses. The accompanying dossier was sparse but damning. 6 months of digging into money trails that led straight to Viktor Rostov's cartel empire. $5 million would hit his offshore account the moment her death was confirmed clean. The client's handwritten instruction was curt. Make it look like a mugging gone wrong. No traces, no witnesses. Damian had ended 37 lives over 9 years. Each one had been clinical, efficient, erased like pencil marks under a fresh page. He never asked why. Questions were luxuries he could not afford. He studied the additional surveillance photos clipped to the back. Sophia jogging along the Lake Michigan path at dawn, breath fogging in the chill air. Sophia leaving the Harold Washington Library after midnight, laptop bag slung over one shoulder. Sophia's third-floor walk-up in Lincoln Park, fire escape rusted and half-concealed by ivy. One clean shot from the alley below if he chose the rifle. Or closer, knife in the ribs during a staged robbery. Simple. He closed the folder, slid a 20 under the coffee cup, and stepped into the downpour. The city swallowed him without noticing. Cars hissed past on wet asphalt. Distant sirens wailed like wounded animals. Damian walked 3 blocks to where his black sedan waited in shadows, plates swapped that morning. He drove to her neighborhood, parked legally 3 streets over, and settled in with binoculars. At 10:47 p.m., the lights in her apartment flicked on. Sophia appeared at the window briefly, arms full of grocery bags and a canvas tote that looked heavy with books. She set everything down, pulled out her phone, and laughed, head thrown back, genuine, unguarded. The sound didn't reach him, but the shape of it did. Something cracked behind the wall he had built in his chest years ago. He lowered the lenses. Nothing, he muttered to the empty car. Just a face. Just a job. Tomorrow she would cease to exist. 5 million richer. Another number added to the tally. He started the engine and pulled away, rain drumming the roof like impatient fingers. The mantra repeated in his skull. Targets are not people. They are jobs. Clean, done, gone. Yet as the city lights blurred in the rearview mirror, her laugh replayed, soft, alive, impossible to erase. It clung like smoke in a closed room, refusing to fade. Chapter 2. Shadows in the City. 3 days. Damian became a ghost in Sophia's orbit. He wore different jackets, different hats, kept distance. Mornings, he watched from a bench, as she bought coffee from the same silver cart near the lake path. Always black, always double-tip when the vendor's hands shook from cold. Afternoons, he sat across the street from the library in a borrowed delivery van, noting how she lingered at the microfilm readers, scribbling in a red leather notebook. Evenings he trailed her home on foot, memorizing the rhythm of her walk, quick, purposeful, never looking over her shoulder. She fed stray cats behind the library loading dock, 3 tabbies and 1 black tom with a torn ear. She spoke to them softly, called the black one Shadow, even though he hissed at everyone else. Damian watched her kneel in the gravel, offering scraps from her lunch, and felt an unfamiliar pang. Tenderness. He crushed it immediately. On the 4th night he followed her to the Art Institute Gala, black tie event, cancer research fundraiser. He rented a tuxedo from a pawn shop, paid cash, arrived early. Inside the marble halls he blended among the wealthy, quiet, polite, invisible. Sophia arrived in a sleeveless black dress that skimmed her like midnight water. No jewelry except small silver hoops. She moved through the crowd with easy grace, shaking hands, laughing at bad jokes. eyes scanning constantly as though cataloging every face. When she slipped onto the balcony for air, Damien followed at a measured pace. The lake wind carried the scent of diesel and coming winter. She leaned on the stone railing, staring at the dark water. "You look like you're here for the free champagne, not the speeches," she said without turning. Damien froze for half a second, then stepped beside her. "Guilty as charged. Friend of someone important, apparently." She turned, smile quick and assessing. "Sophia. And you're lying about the friend part, but I'll allow it." They talked. Books first, her love for old noir paperbacks, his careful mention of Chandler. Then the city itself. Hidden murals in Pilsen, the way the lake turned silver at dawn, why Chicago smelled of metal and possibility after rain. 20 minutes passed like 20 seconds. When she laughed at his dry remark about overpriced caviar, she touched his sleeve. Light, accidental. Current ran up his arm, sharp and unwelcome. He excused himself before it could deepen. Back in the bare safe house on the west side, he pinned her photo to the wall again. The red marker X he had drawn days earlier now looked obscene, violent. He stared at it until his eyes burned, then ripped the picture free and dropped it into the metal sink. A match flared, flame ate paper, curled edges blackening. $5 million. One unguarded laugh, one brief touch. The scales refused to balance. He poured whiskey he didn't drink and watched the city lights flicker through cracked blinds, wondering when the job had started feeling like betrayal. Chapter 3. The Target's Light. Damien broke protocol. He never initiated contact before the kill. Contact bred memory, memory bred hesitation. Yet at 6:15 a.m. he laced running shoes, pulled on a gray hoodie, and jogged to the lakefront path. He timed it perfectly, passed her at the third bend, let his wireless earbuds slip from his pocket onto the asphalt. She slowed, bent to retrieve them. "These yours?" she asked, holding them out. He stopped, breathing harder than necessary. "Yeah, thanks. Clumsy this morning." She smiled. "Happens. I'm Sophia. Damien." They started running together without discussion, side by side, pace matching effortlessly. She teased him about his form. "You run like someone being chased," and he let himself grin. "Maybe I am." Mornings became routine. They met at the same bench, ran 5 miles, talked in fragments between breaths. She spoke of her mother's long illness, her father gunned down in a supposed robbery that smelled of cartel payback, the death threats that arrived in plain envelopes every few weeks. "I keep going because stopping means they win," she said once, voice steady. Damien listened. He offered nothing of himself. No mention of the foster homes, the agency that recruited broken boys, the kills that funded his escape from that life. Silence was safer. One dawn the sky burned gold over the skyline. They stopped at the water's edge, chests heaving. Sophia stared across the lake. "I feel safe with you, Damien," she said quietly. "Like nothing can reach me when you're here." The words landed like a blade between ribs. He wanted to confess. Every contract, every silent shot, the folder with her face that still sat in his safe. Instead, he leaned in, pressed lips to her forehead. "I won't let anything happen to you," he whispered. The promise tasted of ash and iron. That afternoon, he used a burner phone to call the client's line. Job delayed, complications. Static, then ice. Fix them, or we find someone who will. Clocks ticking. Damien crushed the phone under his heel in an empty lot. Plastic cracked like bone. He had spent a decade as hunter. Now, without conscious decision, he had become her shield. The shift terrified him. Chapter 4. Unexpected Meeting. Rain fell in curtains the night Damien decided truth could wait no longer. He stood outside her building for 20 minutes, soaked to the skin, clutching white roses wrapped in damp paper. When he finally pressed the buzzer, his hand shook. Sophia opened the door in an oversized university sweatshirt, hair loose. Her eyes widened. "Damien, you're drenched. Come in before you drown." Inside smelled of vanilla candles and aged paper, books stacked everywhere. She took the roses, found a mason jar for them, then pushed him toward the bathroom. Towel, now. He emerged in borrowed sweatpants and one of her old t-shirts that stretched tight across his shoulders. She handed him chamomile tea. Their fingers brushed. Neither withdraw. Thunder rolled outside like distant artillery. "I'm not who you think I am," he began, voice low. She tucked her legs under her. "Then tell me." Words stuck. Instead, he leaned in and kissed her, slow at first, then desperate, as though oxygen lived only in her mouth. She answered with equal hunger. Hands found skin, clothes shed in lamplight. They moved to the couch, then the rug, thunder masking gasps. Every touch stripped another layer of the killer he carried. When they finally stilled, sweat slick and trembling, she traced the long scar across his ribs. "Whoever you really are," she murmured, "I'm already in love with him." Damien closed his eyes against sudden heat behind his lids, tears he hadn't shed since he was 12. He held her until her breathing evened into sleep. Tomorrow he would burn the contract, torch every backup file, vanish from the network. Tonight he allowed himself to believe redemption might exist after all. Outside, rain softened to mist. Inside, two hearts beat in fragile synchrony. For the first time in years, the silence in his head felt like peace instead of absence. Chapter 5: Stirrings of the Heart. Weeks melted together. Damien severed old ties, canceled contracts with curt messages, powered off burners, ignored increasingly furious voicemails from handlers who once considered him their best asset. He moved into Sophia's apartment under the pretext of convenience. She never questioned the heavy duffel bag he kept locked in her closet, never asked why he checked window locks 3 times each night. They built small rituals: midnight pasta with too much garlic, barefoot dancing to scratched jazz records she inherited from her mother, lovemaking in every room until furniture protested. Her laughter, bright, unguarded, became the only sound capable of quieting the ghosts that still whispered in his dreams. One evening, she burst through the door waving a newspaper. Her latest exposé dominated the front page. Rostov's money laundering network, mapped in damning detail. "They're scared now," she said, eyes blazing. "Really scared." Damien pulled her close. "Good. Let them be." He had already traced the original contract to Viktor Rostov himself. 2 rival hitmen sent as backup had never returned from an abandoned warehouse on the south side. Damien's silenced 9mm had seen to that. He told her none of it. Some truths were too heavy to share yet. That night he watched her sleep, streetlight painting silver stripes across her cheek. He traced her profile with one finger, barely touching. "I love you," he breathed into the dark. "More than my life. More than every drop of blood I've ever spilled." The words felt foreign, enormous, true. For the first time since childhood, Damien felt human, flawed, vulnerable, alive. The hitman inside him shrank smaller each day, crowded out by something warmer, something dangerous in its own way. Hope. Chapter 6. The Point of No Return. The burner buzzed once. Damien snatched it before the vibration woke Sophia. Screen: "Finish the job or we finish her. 48 hours. Attached photo: Sophia asleep in their bed, taken from inside the room, angle high, camera hidden. Someone had been here. Ice flooded his veins. He moved silently, packed go bag, wiped surfaces, collected every trace. Then he knelt beside the bed. "Sophia, wake up. We have to leave. Now." Her eyes snapped open. No panic, only trust. "Okay." 20 minutes later they were on I-94 North in a stolen Explorer, headlights off for the first 10 miles. Sophia held his hand across the console while he drove. Neither spoke until the city lights faded. At a roadside motel outside Milwaukee they stopped. 1 room, 1 bed. Door locked, chair wedged under knob. Damien sat on the edge of the mattress. "I was hired to kill you." He told her everything: the envelope, the photos, the gala, the mornings running together while carrying the weight of her death sentence. He spoke until his throat ached. Sophia listened without interrupting. When he finished, she cupped his face in both hands. "You chose me instead. That's the only part that matters." They made love slowly, reverently. as though memorizing each other against a future that might never come. Afterward, she curled against his chest. In the gray morning, Damien burned his remaining fake IDs in the motel parking lot. Ashes swirled on cold wind. The Shadow Man was dead. Only the man who loved Sophia remained, terrified, determined, finally free. Chapter 7, Truth Unveiled. They reached a remote cabin in the Superior National Forest, property owned by an old forger Damien once protected. No neighbors for miles. Pines scent thick. Snow dusted the ground even in early fall. 2 weeks passed in fragile domesticity. Sophia wrote her final exposé on a battered laptop, fingers flying. Damien taught her to shoot, first a .22, then his preferred Glock. She was a natural. Journalism school didn't cover this, she joked after grouping 3 rounds inside a 6-inch circle at 25 yards. One night the generator coughed and died. Damien stepped outside with a flashlight to check fuel lines. When he returned, Sophia stood in the living room, holding his old burner, the one he thought he destroyed. Screen glowed. Her own photograph, red X slashed across her smiling face. "You kept this?" Her voice cracked. Damien felt the floor tilt. He dropped to his knees on the rough pine boards. "I kept it to remind myself what I almost destroyed. I was sent to kill you, Sophia. I looked at you and couldn't pull the trigger. I won't, ever." Tears tracked down her cheeks. She knelt in front of him, forehead to forehead. "I already knew. Not the details, but the weight. The way you look at me like I'm the only light you've ever seen. That's why I stayed. Why I still stay." Past burned away. Only truth remained, raw, painful, cleansing. Outside, wind moved through pines like whispered forgiveness. Inside, 2 people rebuilt themselves around each other. Chapter 8, Deadly Pursuit. Day 17. 3 black SUVs roared up the dirt road at dusk, headlights slicing through gathering dark. Damien was outside splitting wood. He dropped the axe and sprinted for the tree line. Rifle in hand, he met them on his terms. First vehicle took 2 rounds through the windshield. Driver and passenger slumped. Second SUV swerved. Damien rolled behind a fallen log, returned fire, glass shattered, tires blew, men spilled out shouting in Spanish. Sophia appeared at the cabin window, Glock steady in both hands. She fired once, shoulder hit. Man spun, dropped. Damien moved like the shadow he once was, silent, lethal. Flanked left through underbrush, planted 2 tripwires with fishing line and flashbangs from his pack. Explosions cracked the night. Screams, 2 more down. Last man crawled toward the radio. Damien ended him with a single suppressed shot. Silence returned, broken only by ringing ears and distant owl call. Blood on his hands again. This time every drop was for love. They grabbed what they could, laptops, cash, weapons, then fled deeper into forest on foot. 2 miles later they found a hunter's truck, keys under the seat. Sophia drove while Damien bandaged a graze on his left arm. No more running. He believed her. For the first time, hope outweighed dread. The hunter had finally escaped his own hunt. Chapter 9, Escape to Freedom. They crossed into Canada at a quiet border post using new identities, Michael and Anna Reed. A retired fisherman's cottage on Vancouver Island became home. Gray shingles, cedar deck overlooking the strait, roses growing wild along the fence. Damien found work repairing boats at the marina, honest labor, calloused hands that no longer held triggers. Sophia wrote under a pseudonym, articles about environmental justice instead of cartels. No byline, no spotlight. Safety. Months passed in gentle rhythm. They planted a garden, tomatoes, basil, lavender. Adopted a scruffy mutt they named Calder after the river. Evenings they danced in the kitchen to radio ballads, barefoot on worn linoleum. Nightmares faded. Damien's hands, once weapons, now sanded hulls, built bookshelves, cradled Sophia's face each night like something sacred. One October evening they walked the beach at sunset. Waves hissed over pebbles. Damien stopped, pulled a small velvet box from his pocket. "Marry me," he said. "Not because we're hiding, because I choose you. Every day, for the rest of my life." Sophia laughed through sudden tears. Yes, 1,000 times yes. 2 weeks later, a tiny wooden chapel overlooked the sea. Only the elderly priest and calder attended. Rings slid on, simple gold bands. When the words were spoken, Damien felt the final chain of his old life snap. They kissed as gulls wheeled overhead. Husband. Wife. Free. Chapter 10. Eternal Bond. 5 years later, Damien leaned on the porch railing of their expanded cottage, watching Sophia chase their 3-year-old daughter, Elena, through a field of wildflowers. The little girl's laughter rang bright and clear. Sophia's belly swelled gently with their second child, due in spring. The Rostov cartel had collapsed after Sophia's final piece went viral from an encrypted server. International arrests followed. Viktor Rostov sat in a supermax cell for life. No one searched for them anymore. Damien stepped down, wrapped arms around Sophia from behind. She leaned into him. "Still happy you didn't let me finish that job?" he murmured against her hair. She turned in his embrace, eyes shining. "Best decision I never made." They kissed slowly as the Pacific sun sank, painting sky in forgiveness, in forever. The hitman was long dead. In his place stood a husband, a father, a man who had chosen love over death and won. Evenings when Elena and the coming baby slept, Damien and Sophia sat on the porch swing, hands linked. Their story, born in blood, redeemed in quiet grace, lived in every shared glance, every heartbeat. Some contracts are meant to be broken. Some loves are worth every bullet dodged, every shadow left behind. Together they had built a life no darkness could touch. And every sunset reminded them they had won.